all of a sudden we have both smartphones and we also have social media. With one without the other wouldn't really create all this heap of data that is necessary to drive on the advancement of artificial intelligence, if you follow me. So sometimes that's why we call it a revolution, because we need, we need A and B for C to come into fruition, and that's how it works a little bit. But back to this picture here. I'm not gonna drift off too much, because I'm trying to make like even a bigger comparison here. So the interesting thing about Iceland, and actually many other countries, but this is something that we have to come to terms with in Iceland, is that we skipped out on all of these other revolutions, industrial revolutions. In 1944, we were an agricultural society. I mean, there were a few people that lived in towns and cities. There were maybe one or two guys that worked as bankers, and there were maybe a few politicians and few people that did this and that. But we were mainly a society where people lived in rural settings, doing agriculture, and we did not even have an advanced monetary system. We were just using trade. And my grandfather, and I mean, I feel like I'm not even that old, but I'm connected to people that were almost like in the Middle Ages, in the sense that they didn't even use money. They just used credits in the store, and they didn't have use for any kind of central banking system and so forth. And the biggest change and the biggest shift from going from an agricultural society into like more of an urbanized environment has not to do with where people live, really. It has to do with their identity, how they define themselves. Because the generation of my grandparents, they defined themselves from the place that they came from. They were connected to the land and the farm that they were living on, or they were connected to their families, and that's where the identity came from. I am this man, son of this, blah blah blah, with this family name from this creek or fjord or whatever people identified with at that time. But in a matter of just a generation, or the most 2 generations, this all shifted and changed in our society, and we took in all the revolutions at once. We almost didn't have any roads in 1944. And the reason I'm showing you this particular picture is because it is taken on the family farm, and it's a tree that is still standing. It's about to die now, I think, because the lifespan of these trees is not that long. We didn't really have trees. We didn't plant trees unless it was some kind of necessity, and there was no necessity for so like gardening was a new thing. Like any kind of rhetorics or some extra spice, was a novelty back in 1944 in Iceland. And the case that I'm trying to make now is that in Iceland we have shifted from one system to another. We've become urbanized in a matter of 2 generations, maybe 50, 60 years. But I think, and I really think that the whole world now is going through similar changes, where we're going into and from an urbanized setting where we live in cities and we have specific roles in society, and we train ourselves to do something for the rest of our lives. This is how we were taught. This is how life in the structure of our societies is supposed to work. And we are getting shifted from that into a completely new digital world. And I'm not gonna go like bonkers on you and talk about like metaverse or like some kind of, we're gonna be encapsulated in some kind of virtual reality thing. I think the world I'm talking about is just the world that we already are seeing. It's some kind of hybrid between reality and virtual reality, and we've already seen, and it's already here. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg was talking about introducing the metaverse, but some philosophers were responding by saying we're already in it, because we are hooked to our phones for such a long part of our day, really. And when we are in our phones interacting with people that are actually not present at the time, we are in some kind of virtual reality. We are in some kind of advanced or extra reality that, and this is a state that we've been in for 10 or 15 years, but obviously the institutions and foundations of the society are reacting to it in a much slower way. What I'm so concerned about or concerned, no, like interested in. This is not something that gives me headache. Like what I want to achieve, and I'm not saying that I've already achieved it. Like, you know, I just want to continue. Like by writing a book like this, it's just to try to find possible names for what we are about to enter. I called the first book Room Temperature. It was supposed to be some kind of attempt of a name of the state that we are in, some kind of cozy and nice atmosphere, but still, for some reason, not a very pleasant term, because room temperature is more of a scientific term or something that we link to and have connotations with ingredients and food or something. It's like not a very nice thing to be in some sense. This book is called Screenshot, but I have some ideas in it about what we call the world that we're about to enter. And I'm just talking about like a collective word to explain something like we went from agriculture into urbanization. But I think we already have the name, or at least a suggestion to kind of encapsulate what I'm trying to say. And the name is cloud. It's very interesting about the cloud. I'm going to show you here. I don't know what to show you first. So the cloud as a term is a natural successor to the internet, really, because it kind of explains, like the internet is a term that we don't really use anymore because it's unnecessary now, because the internet kind of implies that we are either in it or not in it, like we're online or offline. It has connotations with some kind of physical object that we can touch and maybe get tangled up in. And people were talking about being online and offline in the 90s and maybe up until when smartphones came and this super connectivity, and we're always online now. So it doesn't really have any meaning anymore to say, oh, I looked this up on the internet. You can just say, I looked this up. You know, you don't really have to say something that is all around you, completely, doesn't sometimes need a term. But there is this term about the cloud. And the cloud is a specific thing in technology terms. It's the idea of not storing information on a central place. It's the availability of information everywhere, and you can work from it in real time from everywhere. And it sounds like kind of a boring thing to explain it in technology terms, but it has changed everything, really, if you think about it. Now, I mean, we basically moved our societies, big institutions like the UN, big universities and schools and everything, we basically moved it from some kind of physical locations and central locations into the cloud during the pandemic. We kind of just lifted our societies into the cloud for a couple of years. And so, I mean, it's a big thing, and all the biggest and most valuable companies in the world, they are really selling us the idea of the cloud, and they're selling us software that is run in the cloud, and we are told to upload everything into the cloud, and we take pictures all day, and we share information. It all goes into the cloud, and we trust this kind of so much not tangible and non-physical fog of an idea, the cloud, for so much. And some people have said that the cloud is almost like some kind of philosophical idea of a god or some almighty power. But you know, I don't think we have to go there. You know, I don't think we have to go that deep just to explain how powerful of a thing the cloud is. And the interesting thing is how it crept up on us. We didn't really realize it has happened so silently. We were just taking pictures. We thought they were stored in some, I don't know, in our phones or in our computers. We uploaded. I think we were always tracking that. Yeah, there must be some kind of final destination for where these things end up in. But all of a sudden, no, they are everywhere and they are nowhere. But the cloud is such an interesting thing because, as you can see here, the technology firms, they use the term cloud a lot. You can see it here, Google Cloud, iCloud, Salesforce has the cloud in the logo. Salesforce, by the way, maybe some of you here have not heard about it. It's one of the biggest companies in the world, at least one of the biggest information technologies in the world. And it has this generic name. It's almost like a dystopian thing, like Salesforce. Could be shampoo. It could be just it could be anything. But they create software that runs pretty much everything. I mean, it's just a spooky thing if you think about it. And they're up in the clouds, and that's the thing. They don't have offices all over. They have offices here in Manhattan, but they don't have offices like in every city in the world, even though they have so much power in the world. And all these companies, they are happy to promote the cloud as an idea, because the cloud is a nice way to explain this idea. Because the cloud is light, and IT companies are all about lightness. They're all about things not being heavy. It's so easy. It's this California aspect, because they're all from the West Coast. We're just easy going. We just, wear flip-flops to work, and it's just cloud computing. It's easy. It's not heavy. It's not like IBM in the 1950s with, gray suits and a company anthem or whatever. It's just all easy. It's in the cloud. And I think it's fair of them to do so. But if you think about it, a cloud is also a negative term. It has negative connotations as well. You can get lost in a cloud. A cloud can, on a bad day, be fog. It can be something that hinders your vision. And I really think that we have excessive information today, and we can all agree that there's no problem at all to get information, of where to go and where things are happening. And I think all people that really think independently, they're better off today than 20 years ago. That's what I'm saying. And I am an optimist. I really think that all this access to information is a good thing, because I really think it is good for humans to have information. We are creatures of the intellect and whatnot. Okay. But the excess of information can lead us to not maybe being able to gather actual knowledge or wisdom from that information. And this is something that people were talking about way before big data and cloud computing, or even the computer age. There is a quote, I'm so bad with quotes, but from T.S. Eliot. He was a poet like in the 1930s or 1920s. He was talking about the excess of information, like so much information leads to less knowledge. Because people have always been, complaining about excessive information, even in the 19th century. Like, they're printing newspapers every day now. People were getting mad because of that. But now we have constant updates every minute, and we get instantly bored. So I think it's just a thing to think about. Like, the cloud is here, and we're going into that. And it's a total shift in our societies. And it really is. It's not maybe something that you will see in the appearance. When the pandemic hit for the first time, there was this story that it would be the end of the city. There was somebody who wrote something about New York City is a ghost town. And it was right, maybe for some time. It was not as bustling with activity as it used to be. But the cloud is not going to mean the end of the city or city life or urbanization. Not at all. Just like urbanization didn't mean the end of the country or countryside. We still travel to the countryside. We still produce most of our food in the countryside. We gather a lot of things from the countryside, but we do not connect it straight to our identities anymore. I'm generalizing here, but I think that we take our identities and our heart beats in the cities. That's the thing that I think might change when we enter the cloud or the metaverse or whatever you want to call it. So these are some of the themes that I'm discussing in this book, and this is usually how I want to have book talks. Instead of reading straight from the book, just talking about the themes, and maybe like in a little bit of a conversation form. And since we're not that many and we are at the end of our time, maybe you can leave a little bit of time if you have questions. If not, I will be around here to answer questions. I have nothing on my agenda for the next hours, so don't worry about that. And if you want to pick up a copy of the book, that's would be a very informal thing. Yeah. So, but you can pick up a copy for 20 or 25 bucks or so, and probably would be best if you could pay cash. This is just but let's see if, or we could arrange it in a different way. So if you want a copy of the book, we will figure that out. It's a very informal thing, and we will just do that here. But questions? Or to add, yeah, please go ahead.
I still
Yeah, I think it's yeah, it's some kind of exploration. I have my deeper, like maybe personal I reasons for doing it. Maybe um, I'm gonna try to have a short answer. But the thing is that I've always been fascinated by technology. But as you can maybe hear from my talk here, I'm not an expert in any kind of technology, and I don't know anything about programming or information technology really. Like I could not work for Microsoft or Google or anything. I don't know how these things work really. But I've always been interested in the rhetorics, how these ideas are presented. And I was reading Wired in the 90s because my big brother was a subscriber, and it was like because all of these things were so cool back then. It was like the time of cyberpunk, or like these, because it was a niche back then to have access to the internet. In 1995, 0.5% of the human population had access to the internet. Me and my brother were a part of that 0.5%, and we felt like we were special. We felt like this was like a revolution, like we were some kind of vanguards. And I've always had this idea, like this is a bigger story that has to do with some kind of political and connected with a political movement and identity. But I never thought that these thoughts that I had could enter the conversation with technology, because I thought that would just go on its own pace and they would sell technology and there would be no conversation, between those two ideas. Until I was a grown person and I moved to Toronto, Canada, and I was studying, and I met a guy who was an older gentleman who was a professor emeritus from University of Toronto, but he used to study in MIT. He's a doctor in physics from MIT from 1967. So as conventional, basic kind of science-minded guys you could possibly find. But he had ventured in his life into the humanities, and he was teaching a course at that time called The Poetry of Physics. And when I heard that title, The Poetry of Physics, it kind of exploded my mind, because I thought that you can't have a course like that. What do you mean? And he was like, no, it's a popular course. You should take it. You should check it out. And it's a lot about narratives and mythology surrounding physics and science. And I wouldn't say that it's a whole discipline, but it's definitely a curiosity. And this guy, his name is Bob Logan, Dr. Robert K. Logan. He gave me the confidence to explore technology from a totally different angle. And then I just started doing that, and I just started writing about technology in connection with maybe my own ideas about identity and who we are, and exploration of, and also a little bit about generations, and yeah, so that was kind of the primus motor of that.
So do you feel like it's a book of like philosophy and paradox that is happening, has happened in the world for the past,
Yeah, for sure.
50 years, like you said?
Yeah, for sure. For some reason, I don't myself. I don't present the book as like a book of philosophy, because I guess it's like, because I have this respect for philosophy as this academic discipline, and this is not really examining these things from that standpoint, but it's philosophical in the terms that it has like a holistic view of things going, across different disciplines. About the paradoxes, yeah, of course, as soon as you dissect things, you come across big paradoxes, and it's all about paradoxes. And I think like the biggest paradox, just to name an example, I don't know if it's clearly put down in the book, but it's just something that I've come to know, and I think we all know, is that social media and the fourth industrial revolution and these things, it is enhancing the idea that we are individuals completely. That's what it's all about. The iPhone, it's all about you, looking at your, it's about ego, it's about the individual catering to its needs. But at the same time, it is making us all the same. And I mean, it's so evident. Like the more we become empowered as individuals, the more people just start wearing. Everybody wears the same clothes, and I know I'm generalizing, but you can see it, like with how trends work and how things are kind of smoothed out, and even moral values. We've seen a lot of discourse of moral values on social media, and most of them are good. They're very good because they've led to changes in how we perceive and given people that belong to minorities a chance to speak up, voices that we didn't hear before in mass media, because mass media was just controlled within hierarchy. But at the same time, we are also seeing sometimes less of now I'm just saying such obvious things, like, you know, with the echo chambers and everything. We are not seeing as much of a colorful discourse as we might, and not as many different opinions being put down. Like, we are being less. What is it called? The Icelandic term málefnalegt. What is it called? Like being. We are, yeah. So that's a paradox for sure. And so many, yeah. Yeah. Of course. That's I was talking about málefnalegt, as in, like, we are sometimes not as concerned with the subject, but rather with, like, we are very much, obviously, because now we can trace everything. Like, we can trace all opinions and everything. So now it's a lot about the agenda. Where is this opinion coming from? And is it a part of a bigger movement or such? While before, I guess we were more able to and willing to take arguments at face value. If somebody's telling something, we were like, oh, okay, let's hear this person out. He can talk for a few minutes. Now it's just, oh, this person belongs to this group. That's why he feels like this. And the algorithms are actually helping us do that thinking for us. And we are really outsourcing our thoughts, and even moral thoughts, which are by nature supposed to be difficult, to the computer. And I think that's a bad thing. That's a bad thing for humans. And just, you know, because I sometimes use this to sum up my talks, I always thought that AI was about computers getting more and more like humans, that they would acquire human thought and they would be able to do human things that we only humans were able to do. This is how I thought of AI, and this is because AI did exist as an idea and an ideology for dozens of years, because AI starts out and being developed in the 1950s. But and what maybe strengthened this idea in my head is that in the 90s, when I was so fascinated by technology, reading Wired magazine and all of that, there was this big duel between AI and humans in the form of the greatest chess champion, or the world champion of chess, who was a Russian, Garry Kasparov. He was competing against the best chess computer, which was part of the like a product of IBM, which is an American company. So it was a little bit of a Cold War feeling to it. The computer was called Deep Blue, and it was a big staged event where the computer won for the first time, or it was a draw, I can't remember, and then they had a rematch in New York City in 1997 where Kasparov actually lost. And it was presented like, now humans are not as good as computers in math. No, in chess, which is supposed to be this big intellectual, the crown jewelry of human thought, playing chess, and the computers are better at it. So that kind of strengthened this idea that AI is all about computers getting better at stuff that we used to be able to do, and only us. But for the past years, I've started to think that maybe this is not the only way to think of AI. It's not only the computers getting more and more accustomed to our thought, it's also us meeting the computers midway. It's also us starting to think a little bit more like computers. We are sometimes, in our discourse and in how we present our opinions on social media, we are very much succumbed to the rules of the platform. And we think it's all open and free. We think it's all, it couldn't be more expressive, and this is really enhancing ourselves as individuals and voices with opinions. But isn't necessarily so, because as soon as we start talking about something that people don't want to hear, we are silenced out. And you can see it. It's actually getting kind of sad on social media, I think. You have to promote everything. Like, you have to pay for it. Like, even people that have a big following, they have to pay for people to listen to them. It's like, it's pathetic. It's like, you have to pay to have friends. You have to say something that is popular to attract some, gain some traction. And I think we are a little bit like, I mean, we're humans, so we're able to think freely and independently, and I think we're sometimes giving it up a little bit too much for the machine. But this is the exact same thought that people had in the 19th century with the when conventional machinery was starting to crawl into our societies. People were like, "Oh, the machine is going to kill us all. We're just going to be hogs in the machine, cogs in the machine," and yeah. But now we are, facing the same kind of idea. So don't be shy of approaching me after this for more thoughts and something. But we've been going a little bit past the hour now, so I think the formal part of this discussion is hereby declared. Yeah, but I can stick around and.
Please stick around and ask questions.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.